3 real romantic stories about meeting girls in Pattaya, lost in her lies. The first time I saw her, the neon lights of Pattaya reflected in her dark eyes, making them shimmer like the sea at night. She sat at the rooftop bar, her long black hair cascading down her back, her red lips wrapped around a cocktail straw. I was drawn to her instantly. "Is this seat taken?" I asked. She glanced up, her lips curving into a slow, knowing smile. "It is now." Her name was May. She spoke English with a soft, lilting accent, her voice carrying the sweetness of a woman who knew exactly how to charm a man. We talked for hours, laughing, drinking, sharing stories. She was from Chiang Mai, she told me, but she loved Pattaya, the energy, the excitement, the endless nights. "Have you ever been in love?" I asked at some point, emboldened by whiskey and the way she was looking at me. She tilted her head, studying me. "Once," she said, "but love is complicated." I should have listened to the way her voice wavered, the hesitation in her words, but I was already falling. The beginning of something dangerous. We spent the next few weeks tangled in each other's arms, in dimly lit bars, on motorbike rides along the beach, in the warmth of my bed. She was intoxicating, unpredictable. One night she was affectionate and tender, the next she was distant, distracted. I ignored the warning signs, the unanswered texts, the late-night phone calls she silenced with a forced laugh, the way she would disappear for days, only to return with a kiss that made me forget to ask where she had been. "Do you trust me?" she whispered one night as we lay together, her fingers tracing circles on my chest. I hesitated. "Yes," I lied. The first cut. One evening, I went to meet her at a bar she loved, a small place near Walking Street where the music was low and the drinks were strong. She hadn't told me she would be there, but I had a feeling, and I was right. She was laughing, her fingers trailing over the wrist of a man I didn't recognize. He leaned in close, whispering something into her ear. She didn't push him away. She didn't even flinch. Something in my stomach twisted. I turned to leave, but she saw me. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. Then, as if nothing had happened, she stood and walked over to me, slipping her arm around my waist. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" she asked sweetly. I could smell his cologne on her skin. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice calm. Too calm. She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "A friend." The lie was smooth, practiced. I could have walked away then. I should have, but I didn't. The spiral. Love makes you foolish. I convinced myself it was nothing, that she was just friendly, that I was overthinking. But the truth kept gnawing at me. I started noticing things, whispers, glances, the way she'd turn her phone away when I was near. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because when she was with me, she made me feel like I was the only man in the world. When she kissed me, I forgot everything else, but I wasn't the only one. And deep down, I knew it. The breaking point. The night everything fell apart, I wasn't looking for the truth. It found me. I was supposed to meet her at my place. She never showed. A sinking feeling pulled me toward the beachfront hotel where she once mentioned staying with a friend. I didn't want to go inside, but I did. I knocked on the door. Silence. I knocked again, harder. Then, the door opened, and there he was. Not the man from the bar. Not even one man. Two. Both half-dressed. Both looking at me with that same smug, knowing smirk. And then May appeared behind them, wrapped in a sheet, her hair messy, her lips swollen from kisses that weren't mine. For a moment, we just stared at each other. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even look guilty. "Why?" I finally choked out. She sighed, as if I was the one who had disappointed her. "You knew what this was," she said simply. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hate her. But more than anything, I wanted to forget her. She stepped forward, reaching for me. "Don't," I whispered, stepping back. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Regret? Sadness? Or just annoyance that I had caught her? I would never know. The end, or something like it. I left that night, left Pattaya, left her. But some nights, when the neon lights flicker, when the scent of the sea drifts through the open window, I still see her. May, the woman who taught me that love is not always beautiful. Sometimes it's a lie wrapped in silk. The girl from the bar. The first time I saw her, she was sitting under the dim glow of the bar lights, her dark eyes reflecting something distant, something lost. She was slowly swirling a cocktail in her hand, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders. Something about her felt different from the other girls here, quieter, deeper, like she didn't belong, yet had nowhere else to be. I sat next to her, ordered a drink, and gave her a casual smile. "Alone?" I asked. She turned her gaze to me, her expression unreadable. "Not anymore." Her name was Nisha. She spoke English with a soft, careful accent, choosing her words like they mattered. We talked for hours, lost in conversation as the world around us blurred into laughter, music, and the occasional drunken fight. "Why are you here?" I asked her at one point. She gave me a small smile. "Same reason as you, I guess. Searching for something." "And what have you found?" She hesitated. "Ghosts." I chuckled. "Is that what you think I am?" She didn't laugh, just looked at me as if measuring something unseen. "Not yet." A love that wasn't mine. I saw her every night after that. She would be waiting at the same bar, in the same seat, wearing a different dress, but carrying the same distant sadness in her eyes. And every night, I convinced myself that I was the reason she stayed. We walked along the empty beach after hours, the waves brushing over our feet, the city lights flickering behind us. Sometimes she would talk about her childhood, about the small village she left behind. Other times she would ask me questions about my life, my past, as if trying to piece together a puzzle she already knew the answer to. One night, as I brushed a strand of hair from her face, she sighed. "You shouldn't fall for me," she whispered. I smiled. Too late. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The other man. It started with little things. A phone call she ignored. A glance over her shoulder when we were together. The way she would suddenly turn distant, pulling away just when I thought I had her. Then, one night, I found out. I had gone to the bar early, expecting to surprise her. But she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her, older, well-dressed, with the confidence of someone who had been there before. His hand rested on hers. His fingers tracing circles over her skin, the way mine had done just nights before. She didn't push him away. She didn't even flinch. I stood there, frozen, as the truth settled in my chest like a stone. And then she looked up and saw me. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Shock, guilt, maybe even regret. But just as quickly, she masked it, offering me the same small, unreadable smile she had given me that first night. She didn't chase after me, as I walked away. And that hurt more than anything. The lie that stayed. I tried to forget her. I drank. I met other women. I convinced myself she was just another beautiful lie in a city full of them. But the truth had a way of pulling me back. A week later, I saw her again. She was at the bar, alone this time, staring into a half-empty glass. I should have walked past her. I should have let her be just a memory. But I sat down. "You lied to me," I said. She let out a quiet breath. "I never promised you anything. You let me believe you were mine." She turned to me then, her eyes darker than the ocean at midnight. "Did I? Or did you just want to believe it?" I had no answer. The bartender set down 2 drinks in front of us, as if knowing we needed them. And, against all logic, against all reason, I stayed. Because some ghosts never leave you, and some hearts, no matter how broken, still crave the touch of the one who shattered them. The lights of Walking Street. The first time I saw her, she was standing under the neon glow of Walking Street, the red and blue lights casting shifting colors across her smooth skin. The night was alive with music, laughter, and the chaos of Pattaya's infamous nightlife, but she stood still, detached from it all. She was beautiful, long black hair cascading over her bare shoulders, dark eyes holding a mystery I couldn't quite place. She wasn't looking at me, not at first, but when our eyes met, something passed between us, something I couldn't explain. She smiled, not the usual playful, inviting smile of the girls working the bars, but something softer, almost knowing. Then she turned and walked into the crowd. I followed, a night to remember. I caught up with her outside a small bar tucked away in an alley, a place quieter than the main street. She was leaning against the wall, lighting a cigarette. "You have a habit of following strangers?" she asked, amusement flickering in her voice. "Only the ones who look like they want to be followed," I replied. She smirked, but didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a slow drag, her eyes studying me. Then, finally, she spoke. "Buy me a drink?" We sat at a corner table, the dim glow of the hanging lanterns making the moment feel almost intimate. Her name was Mai. She spoke English well, but with an accent that made every word sound like a secret. "What brought you to Pattaya?" I asked. "Same thing that brings everyone," she said, stirring the ice in her glass. "A little escape, a little adventure." "And did you find it?" She hesitated, then smiled. "I'm still looking." Something about her felt different, like she belonged to this place but wasn't part of it, like she existed in a space between the lights and the shadows, never fully one or the other. As the night deepened, I found myself lost in her stories, in her laughter, in the way she looked at me like she saw something no one else did. "Come with me," she said suddenly. "Where?" "Just come." And like a fool, I did. The secret she kept. She led me away from the bars, away from the noise, until we were standing on a quiet stretch of beach. The city lights shimmered in the distance, but here, only the moon and the gentle sound of the waves filled the night. Mai kicked off her heels, stepping into the cool water. I watched as she closed her eyes, tilting her head back like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. "You like the sea?" I asked. "I need it," she murmured. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "Do you believe in ghosts?" I chuckled. "Is that your way of scaring me off?" She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "No, just wondering." Something about the way she said it sent a shiver through me. Then she took my hand and pulled me into the water. We waded in, the warm sea lapping at our legs. She pressed close, her body soft against mine. her breath warm as she whispered, "Kiss me." And I did. Her lips tasted of salt and secrets, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. But when I pulled back, something in her eyes had changed. "You should go now," she said softly. Confused, I reached for her again, but she stepped away. What's wrong?" She shook her head, smiling sadly. "You'll forget me soon enough." And before I could ask what she meant, she turned and walked deeper into the water. I watched, my heart pounding, as she disappeared beneath the waves. I waited and waited, but she never came back up. I ran into the sea, searching, calling her name, but there was nothing, no sign of her. It was like she had never been there at all. The truth I didn't want to know. The next day, I went back to the small bar where we had first talked. I asked the bartender about her, describing everything: her name, her voice, her smile. He frowned. "My?" I nodded. The bartender looked uneasy. "You must be mistaken. There hasn't been a girl like that here for a long time." "But I just met her last night." He cut me off with a shake of his head. "Mai drowned in the sea 3 years ago. People say sometimes she comes back." I felt cold. Maybe he was lying. Maybe it was a joke. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had kissed a ghost, and some part of me would never stop waiting for her to return.